please like our video and subscribe to RotoWire. Then go to rotowire.com/pod for a free 10-day trial.
Welcome to the award-winning RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast, sponsored by BetMGM and Monkey Knife Fight. It's Friday, January 29th, 2021. Alex Barutha here with Shannon McEwen on the line. No Ken this week. He is traveling like Shannon was last week. So let's just jump straight into the news, Shannon. The Lakers last night without Anthony Davis lost 107-92 at the hands of your Detroit Pistons. I don't think there's really anything here for the Lakers, in terms of should we be concerned or not. So I want to use this as a quick jumping point for the Pistons and fantasy. Blake Griffin, really good game, 36 fantasy points in 35 minutes. Do you think this is a jumping off point for him, or are you kind of just expecting these up and down performances, this reduced Blake Griffin moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, he was feeling it last night. He had his stroke, 5 for 10 from downtown. I'm not as concerned about Blake Griffin as most. I feel like he's been trying to appease his new teammates, deferring to Jeremy Grant in the early going. But I do expect him. I mean, there are positives with Blake Griffin too. He's playing 32 minutes per game, which. Yeah, last year, we can't really even look at last year. He had played 28 minutes per game. He dealt with so many injuries. Only played in 18 games. He's only 31. I don't feel like he's fallen off the cliff like his production to date this season would indicate. I just think he's kind of, like I mentioned, deferred to his teammates, and he's had some bad shooting stroke. But I expect that to improve. I don't think he'll bounce back and be the 24/7 and 5 guy he was in 2018, 2019. But I do expect Blake to have solid fantasy value. The real question is, can he stay healthy? And what kind of management does the team give him? How many days off does he receive? He's already sat 3 or 4 games. I think it's 5 games. Yeah, 5 games so far because of injury this season. So that's going to be a concern. Is he going to play both games of a back-to-back? Maybe in the second half of the season that'll be the case. It remains to be seen. And also the fact that the Pistons aren't good, and they're gonna have one of the worst records in the league. So that could impact how they deploy Blake Griffin later in the season as well. But I think last night's a better indication of Blake Griffin's value, in my opinion, than most of the other games this season. It's probably somewhere in between, but I think he's still a 17, 18, 5 and 4 guy when he's healthy.
Yeah, last night's game was the highest usage rate for Blake Griffin this season, 25%. I'm with you on Blake. I mean, he's a hold. Most of your fantasy teams, you can get hot, put some big games up. The main concern right now is just the the shot attempts essentially. Mm-hmm. He's down almost 9% usage rate, stuff like that. But we know he's a talented passer, and so even on nights where he's deferring and he's feeling healthy and feeling good, he'll still rack up plenty of assists. I also want to ask you about Delon Wright. Starting off the season slow, but the past 5 games have been great for him. 15 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. Those are averages. 2.5 steals and blocks across the past 31 minutes. Do you think if people have Delon Wright on their team, they should kind of cash in the stock, sell high, or at this point, is he a hold?
If you can sell high, I think it's worth doing so. Killian Hayes is out. It remains to be seen when Hayes will return. He could end up missing. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but he could end up missing almost the entire season, depending on how cautious the Pistons want to be with their first round pick. If Hayes returns, that's going to hurt Delon Wright quite a bit. Delon Wright's also been kind of inflated in recent games because you had Blake Griffin sit out a couple. You had Derrick Rose sit out a couple of those games. I think the most recent game against the Lakers, 6 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists. That's more along the lines of what you should expect, but still solid, holds value. 27 minutes in that game. My concern with Delon Wright is just is the usage going to be high enough? Is he going to get enough field goal attempts? even in this good stretch, the most amount of shots that he's had is 14, and usually it's hovers around 7 or 8 field goal attempts per game. So I worry about him from that standpoint. I would sell high if I owned him anywhere. I don't think he's a long-term part of this team. So eventually, as some of their younger guys kind of grow into the roles, and other players get healthy, he's gonna not be leaned on as heavily.
I'm with you. He's 28 years old. He's not part of the rebuild. Essentially, he's probably a guy they bring in. Good. I mean, he's not really a veteran presence, but someone they can bring in for good habits for the young guys. Him and Rose theoretically kind of mentoring Killian Hayes, and then they can trade him to a contender or something like that at some point. But yeah, he started the past 12 games, and as a whole in those 12 games, averaging 10, 5, and 5, 1.6 steals. So, if you really need the steals, hang on to him. Otherwise, I'm with you. I think he's a sell high. Speaking of potential sell highs, we have the Bradley Beal trade rumors still swirling. Wizards are 3-11 at this point. The possibility is obviously here that he gets dealt to a contender, or just a team where he would see fewer shot attempts. Would you be willing to sell high to, get ahead of that? Or is that kind of just thinking too hard about it and you'd rather just hang on to his production? I can ask you the same question essentially about someone like DeMar DeRozan, for example.
Yeah, no, I do think Beal's a sell high candidate. I know I saw an exchange on Twitter about possibly, trading Beal for James Harden, and some of the fantasy pundits voted yes, do that, get Harden in that deal. And I agree. I'm on that side as well. I think the likelihood of Beal getting traded is fairly high, and it's very, very unlikely that he'll still see the same amount of shot attempts at his new destination. I mean, definitely not enough shot attempts to score 35 points per game. I mean, he's just been out of his mind this season. As long as he stays with the Wizards, he'll probably continue to do that. It certainly helps that Westbrook has sat a handful of games, which has helped inflate Beal's numbers. I'm amazed that he's actually better this year than he was last year. There's no way I saw that coming. I loved everything out of Beal. I was really, really high on him last year. I was lucky enough to own him in a few spots, and I was like, this is the peak. There's no way it gets better with Russell Westbrook in town, but it has. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, he's leading the NBA in scoring right now at, like you mentioned, 35 points a game, doing it efficiently as well. He's got a 37% usage rate. I mean, he is putting up MVP caliber numbers, and he'll never get that recognition because he's on the Wizards and they're terrible. But if they were passable, and putting up these numbers, he would certainly be there. Let's pivot to Houston. They've won 4 straight games. They came back from down 20 points against the Trailblazers yesterday. This is a gambling-related question. So we have Christian Wood on Houston. Does he deserve to be the favorite for most improved? Right now on DraftKings Sportsbook and most others, I believe he is the favorite right now at plus 130. And are there any other names you'd be interested in most improved player from a value perspective?
So my one issue with Wood will be games played. I want to see if he can get there. He's played 13 games so far, missed about 5. I worry if he's going to be able to play enough games to win an award like that. And then also, and I don't think this is me being a homer, but I think Jeremy Grant should be the favorite right now. If you watched Christian Wood last year, he was basically doing this with the Pistons when he got the minutes. There were certainly stretches of the season where he was doing it. So, his per 36 last year was 22 and 10.5. Similar percentages, basically doing exactly what he's doing now that he gets those minutes on a nightly basis. Jeremy Grant's the guy who's come out and just redefined his game. Looks like a completely different player than he has for the past 6-7 seasons. So he would get my vote. I just am blown away at the type of scorer he's been, and
Right.
fairly efficient doing it as well. Not super efficient, 44%, but a little bit higher than I would have expected in this kind of role. I never would have envisioned him chucking up 18, 19 shots per game.
I'm with you on that. Usually most improved goes to a guy who has kind of taken a step up in terms of this guy was a role player. Now he's either an all-star or a fringe all-star, or he was an all-star and now he's basically, top 3 MVP caliber.
Yeah, yeah.
And Wood and Grant both fit the first of those. They were basically role players, and now they've emerged into guys who are putting up all-star numbers. I think Wood, I'm with you. I think Wood really only has the nod here because Houston's 8-9 and Detroit's 5-14. And I think if the records were flipped, we'd be talking about this differently. And I don't think that's necessarily fair because most improved really isn't about, I don't think it's about, wins and losses as much as like MVP would be.
Yeah, no, I agree. And looking at the odds, so you got Wood plus 130, Grant plus 150, Jaylen Brown plus 600. Go down the list. Down at the bottom, you got SGA plus 5,000. I actually like that one a lot. He's just, I feel like he's going to grow as the season goes on. The team's going to be horrible. I think that matters a little bit less with this award. He possibly was too good last season, though, to be higher up on that list. But I still like those odds because if he jumps, and right now he's averaging basically 22, 5.5, 6.5. If he improves that and ends the year at like 24, 25, 6 and 7, then I think he becomes more of a factor. And then Boucher or Boucher, I always forget.
Boucher.
Yeah, we'll say Boucher. All right, Boucher is kind of he's a dark horse here because he's out of nowhere, which I feel like the guys who are out of nowhere, like Wood, Grant, Jaylen Brown, Michael Porter Jr., who was pretty good in the bubble last year, these guys are all known quantities. Boucher was, he was that role player who didn't see much time and definitely didn't look like this type of player in his small role. I could see him really getting a push if he continues. I don't know. His production might end up waxing and waning too often for him to end up being a serious candidate. But if he, at the same time, if he ends up earning 30 minutes per game the rest of the way, his stats could be good enough where he gets serious consideration.
Yeah, Boucher, he's had a rough stretch over the past 5 games. And so, it's tough to bet on him with confidence, but I'm with you. I think earlier when he was on like that hot stretch where he was averaging like 20 and 10, he definitely his odds should have been shorter than this. And I don't mind Colin Sexton either, but I'm kind of concerned that he's in the same boat as SGA where they were already averaging 20 points a game before, and you need to go to like 28 to really kind of jump the line, essentially.
Yeah, I agree. Jaylen Brown, similar boat to those two guys as well, where they might have already been too good last year, and their growth is not unexpected. Essentially, one other point about Christian Wood, which makes me want to bet against him even more, is just the fact that I don't think the Rockets team is good, but they might be deeper now than what we previously expected. Essentially, we expected Harden to carry the load, with Wood being that secondary scorer. But now you've got John Wall, who looks as healthy as he's looked in years. You've got Victor Oladipo, and you've got DeMarcus Cousins, and Eric Gordon too is still on the team. And so you've got 4 other guys who can score a bucket. Cousins looked pretty good. He moved back to the bench on Thursday night. But there might be a time when they either trade away PJ Tucker or, if not trade away PJ Tucker, play him less so Cousins and Wood play alongside each other. Defensively, that will be a mess, but it's going to mean more touches for a guy like Cousins, which would be taken away from Wood. So, yeah, that's an interesting aspect to consider as well when thinking about Wood as the favorite.
Yeah, this will be an award worth keeping an eye on over the next few weeks and probably the whole season as well. Let's jump to the waiver wire. I'm going to get things started. Guys available in about 50% of leagues. Wayne Ellington from the Pistons. Last 2 weeks, he's ranked 65th. Now, that's mostly because he is absolutely on fire from three, hitting 5 threes a game over this stretch, 17.6 points. Not really getting you much else in terms of stats, but the Pistons are showing confidence in basically just playing him. And if Wayne Ellington's going to get, 28 to 33 minutes consistently, he's going to fire up close to 10 threes a game, which is basically what he's doing. And he's not going to keep hitting them at 60%. That's ridiculous, right? But even if he drops down to a normal percentage, he still gets you 2.5, 3 threes. And if you're definitely in a 14-team league, I think he's worth grabbing.
Ellington's crazy, and it's insane. Just the fact that he's shooting so well from downtown, 53%. Been on fire more so. Yeah, I look at last year and the fact that he shot 35%. He essentially hovers between like 35 and 38% from downtown for his career, with a couple outlier seasons where he was higher than that. That's going to come down. It's certainly possible that his three-point shot's improved, but 53% is not going to hold. I do think he's worth a look especially if you're three-pointer desperate and you need help in that category. He is worth a look. And I'm just thrilled that this Pistons theme episode today.
I figured you would be. Okay, who do you have as someone available in about 50% of leagues?
A couple guys we've talked about in the past that I just want to mention. Nick Batum, playing well for the Clippers still, 55% of leagues. I mentioned Jeremy Lamb last week. He's up to about 51%, so his ownership in Yahoo is about over double what it was last week, but still widely available. He started the most recent game for the Pacers, so you got to move on him now if you want to have Lamb. He's not going to put out eye-popping numbers, but 14 points, 5 boards. He'll hit 1.5 3-pointers and get some steals. There's solid value there. The percentages are going to be good as well. So I think 50. Even though his ownership has climbed, it should be higher. Now just throwing out a new name. This guy's very low owned, but Royce O'Neale. He's locked in as a starter for the Jazz. He's playing a career high 32 minutes per game. The numbers aren't eye-popping. 8 points, 6.5 rebounds, 2.3 assists. Not doing much on the defensive side, but he is hitting a career high 1.8 3-pointers per game. Solid percentages. He's the production's never going to be great, but he could hold. Yeah, if you're in a deep enough league and you need someone who's getting 30 minutes a game, I think Royce O'Neale can be helpful roster filler when you need, when the schedule dictates, when the Jazz are playing a 4-game slate that week and some of the other guys are on a lighter schedule.
I'm with you on O'Neale. I've had him in our 14-team league since maybe week 2, and I just can't get rid of him. He's going to stay on my bench. This week he's starting for me. And you're right. 32 minutes a game. He has I think a 9% usage rate, but he does everything pretty well. So for guys who are more of long shots, I'm not even sure this is really a long shot. TJ McConnell, over the past 2 weeks, he's playing 26 minutes a game. They've really thrown him into a bigger role since they lost Oladipo, and then essentially, Karis LeVert's still out. We don't know when he's coming back. TJ Warren's out, I think, until mid-February at the earliest. So I think McConnell's going to keep seeing minutes. The main thing here, 7 assists per game, 1.8 steals in those 26 minutes. He's only getting you 5 points and 2.5 rebounds. But you're picking him up as an assist and steals guy, which on the waiver wire, not easy to find usually.
Yeah, we talk about it. We talk about every year. Assists are impossible to find on the waiver wire typically. So, this is a guy, he averaged 5 assists last season in only 19 minutes per game. So if he's seeing 23, 24 minutes per, or even higher, 26 in the latest game, he can get you 6, 7 assists, 8, 9, 9 like he has in back-to-back games. So I definitely see him as a viable option as an assist guy. One of my long shots, I'm just going to throw out these two. Dorian Finney-Smith for the Mavericks. I feel like his ownership's deflated mainly because he's been injured, right? He's missed some games. He's only played 9 total games for the Mavs, but he's averaging 29 points, 8.6 points, five rebounds, gets you 1.2 steals. His shooting's been bad so far. I think that's going to bounce back some. So you will get some 3-pointers and a better shooting percentage moving forward. I look at this Mavs team and what they need, and Finney-Smith has started. He's started all 9 of those games. And I think he's going to continue to start it's too bad that he got hurt because he was kind of coming into his own, coming off his best game of the season before he was on the shelf for 9 games. So he's just a guy that can get you solid production across the board, nothing eye-popping, but locked in as a starter on that Mavs team. If he's getting 30 minutes per, it's at minimum, I think we get what you saw from him last year, which was essentially 10-6 with 1.5 3-pointers.
Yeah, he's a good solid option in deep leagues because the Mavericks believe in him as a player. Like, they play him almost 30 minutes a game for a reason. He's kind of in that Royce O'Neale category, just in terms of, this guy plays 30 minutes. He'll get you some stats here and there. Perfect guy to keep on your bench in a deep league for a 4-game week situation like that. But yeah, he was in the COVID-19 protocols, just came back and played 24 minutes, which is a good sign after such a long layoff. And the Mavericks aren't particularly deep, so I think they need those minutes from him. But you also have a rookie from the Spurs.
Yeah, if you're looking for someone with more upside but also more risk, Devin Vassell, rookie guard for the Spurs. I guess he's a guard forward. He can play a little bit of the 3. He's had some really impressive games lately. He scored 14 points, 4 rebounds, a couple steals, and a block with 4 3-pointers earlier this week against Washington. His minutes fluctuate. He'll play 26, 27 minutes one game, 15 the next. That Spurs team, especially with Derek White back, I believe Derek White just came back or is playing in the next game. That does complicate. Okay, Derek Wright is expected to return this weekend. With Derek White back, it complicates the rotation somewhat. But they seem to be high on Vassell, and I like what I've seen from him so far. I think eventually he could eat into Patty Mills, Lonnie Walker, their minutes, and. Yeah, it's kind of like Quickly. We mentioned Quickly a few weeks ago, and he's still kind of up and down, but Quickly's had some really good games, and his upside is obvious. I put Vassell in that same kind of category.
Yeah, I think the main thing for Vassell is his upside. He's a 3-and-D guy right now, right? 1.1 threes, 1.3 steals in his 18 minutes. And if he can somehow get more run than that will be great. Yeah, the Derek White situation makes it tough. But Vassell, someone, if you're in a deep league, check him out. If you're in a keeper league, keep him in mind for sure. Let's jump to DFS. We have 10 games on the slate. As of yet, no postponements, which is nice. The games with unders over 230, Atlanta at Washington, Brooklyn at OKC, and Milwaukee at New Orleans. All those are over 230 over under. The main injuries to look out for: Karl Anthony Towns still out, but he should be back soon. Kawhi, Paul George, and Patrick Beverley are all doubtful. Embiid questionable, Donovan Mitchell questionable, D'Angelo Russell questionable, Larry Nance, OG Anunoby, Lonzo Ball all questionable. So in terms of a potential game stack, I think Washington and Atlanta is the obvious one that people are going to look at. You have Trae Young in that game. FanDuel prices 10,600. DeAndre Hunter at 6,600. Clint Capella at 9,600 against the Wizards. And obviously on the Washington side, you have Bradley Beal, who's playing out of his mind, and Russell Westbrook, who's a little underpriced since he's played kind of few minutes lately, hasn't been playing well. And there's still value to be had on the Wizards because all these guys are coming back from injury. It's hard not to like the guys on both sides of this game.
Yeah, it really is. The one issue there is just they're all so expensive. Other than DeAndre Hunter, you have to build your team around the guys. And Trae Young is over 10,000. Capella's just below 10,000. Westbrook, Beal. It's tough. I mean, if you can get it in there and build a lineup, stacking one of those teams, both of those teams, I certainly recommend it.
Yeah. I also like Cody Zeller. So played 30 minutes last game, averaging over 1 fantasy point a minute this season. He's just $4,600. So all that points to, this is a guy who should crush value. My only concern is that he's going up against the Pacers and Miles Turner and Domantas Sabonis, and this is a terrible matchup for him. And I'm worried that it could end up being a trap play where you're in your GPP and you see 30% of people have Zeller, and he comes out and puts up a dud, like an 18 fantasy point per game point performance. The $4,600, it's not, if you get a dud from him, it's not going to completely tank your team, but it's something to look out for.
Yeah, Zeller's interesting. He's one of those guys I can never get right. In DFS, I never roster him for the 35-point game. It's always the game after when he has 19 fantasy points. That's what scares me away from him. The matchup as well. One of the guys I'm targeting, we'll stick at the center position. Naz Reid, I don't love the matchup. Philadelphia, I've seen Joel Embiid embarrass too many other centers, and put them in foul trouble and whatnot. But I like Naz Reid's price. I like his recent production. The fact that Cat's still out. Reid's coming off his best game of the season, 49.9 fantasy points, 8 total blocks and steals, 19 and 7. I wish he were getting more minutes. He's basically hovered right around in between 25 to 27 minutes the past 4 or 5 games. I'd feel a lot more comfortable if he were locked into 32 minutes. But the Timberwolves just don't seem to want to unleash him like that. So still 5,800, given the recent production, he's basically been a lock for 29, 30 fantasy points since moving back into the starting lineup. I like him at that price tag.
So I think the key there is keep in mind the potential Embiid injury news. He's questionable with back soreness. So if Embiid sits out, then you have more of a green light to play Naz Reid, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I wanted to address that Jordan Bell is minimum priced and had 30 fantasy points the other day. I don't know what to do with this because Washington is getting most of their guys back. Washington at this point is about as close to healthy as they have been in a long time. Hachimura's back. Bertans is back. Mo Wagner's back. They still have Alex Len. So if you're looking at Jordan Bell and being like, should I do this? I don't know if you should. Like if you're playing 100 GPP lineups, throw them in 5, right? But like I wouldn't have the confidence in if I'm a one lineup guy to put Jordan Bell in there despite the good production.
Yeah, I'm with you. The fact that everyone, all their big men are returning tonight, makes me highly skeptical of Bell's ability to see 30 plus minutes again tonight. And my guess is that, there's a good chance he doesn't even crack the rotation. I would need more than just confirmation that he's starting. I would need like some kind of confirmation that these 3 or 4 guys who are returning, Hachimura, Bertans, Wagner, are all playing very limited minutes. Bell is still starting. I would need multiple pieces of confirmation to be comfortable rolling him out. My guess is he sees limited minutes. And if you didn't know, Jordan Bell is back in the NBA, and he's playing for the Wizards.
Yeah, a lot of people that was probably breaking news to them. Is there anybody else you're targeting on this slate? Someone that comes to mind either as a value or just someone who you like the matchup?
Yeah, with Donovan Mitchell questionable, I like the Jazz, some Jazz players tonight. I think Jordan Clarkson's the obvious one. He had a gigantic game against Dallas on Wednesday, 31 points, 7 rebounds, 1 block, 1 steal in 32 minutes. The 32 minutes is the big part. It's only, I believe, the second game this season that Clarkson was able to eclipse 30 minutes played. When he plays 30 minutes, he's going to get you over 30 fantasy points. You talk about point per minute guy. He's the walking definition. He's over that. So I like Clarkson a lot at 5,800. The Spurs, a lot of the Spurs players seem to be deflated as far as their salaries go. Keldon Johnson's one of them, 5,600, probably the lowest I've seen him in weeks, maybe a month, which is somewhat odd because, the 2 of the last 3 games, he scored 36 points against Dallas a week ago, 32 fantasy points against Boston on Wednesday. He has some duds mixed in there, an 18-point game here, but here or there, but he's still topping out, getting 30, 35, 40 fantasy points on a regular enough basis that, he's comparable to a guy like DeAndre Hunter production-wise, but is coming in $900 cheaper tonight.
I'm with you on that because we know Denver is not a good defensive team. And so, the Spurs guys have a really good opportunity to put up good games. Like DeRozan at 7,700 was the one that kind of lit up for me.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I know this guy can go for 45 easy, and he can definitely go for 50 because I think he's done it twice this season. Consistency has been an issue for them, but hey, if you're playing a GPP, throw those guys in there. Because they're inconsistent.
One other thing I wanted to point out about the Spurs is their pricing's even more deflated on DraftKings. I know we usually focus our talks on FanDuel just to keep the conversation rolling, but I mean, everyone, Murray, DeRozan, Johnson, they're all much cheaper on FanDuel for tonight's slate, on DraftKings for tonight's slate. It really makes me like them there. So it's a game, if I'm just looking at data from the game, the matchup, I wouldn't necessarily be targeting Spurs guys, especially if White returns tonight, which remains to be seen. That does complicate things a little bit. They'll probably ease him back into the rotation. But I like the price. I like the price on all those guys. It's hard for me. One other guy I'll mention because he burned everyone on Wednesday. Aaron Gordon, another guy. He's just like Cody Zeller. I can't ever get him right. But Aaron Gordon, when he's over $7,000, I'm always scared away. He's down to 6,300 right now. This is a guy who had a stretch of 3 games just a week ago, 55, 45, 41 fantasy points. Then he sat out a game, had 36 fantasy points. And then he put up a dud on Wednesday, 26 minutes. I think he started off like 0 for 8 from the floor, something along those lines, 12 and a half fantasy points. That's the bottom for him. I expect him to bounce back considerably. I expect a lot of, I think he was owned in like 55% of teams on Wednesday for one of the main contests on FanDuel. I expect the ownership to be somewhat deflated tonight, despite the price tag, just because so many people got burned by him on Wednesday.
Yeah, and the Clippers matchup, the Clippers have been playing all right without their main guys there, but you feel like that has to kind of give eventually. And I think targeting Orlando as far as like Vucevic, Aaron Gordon, Cole Anthony, even guys like that makes sense. A couple more notes from me here. I like Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton. I like them almost every game. They're perfect cash plays. And if you need some GPP, like kind of that upper mid-tier filler, pretty hard to go wrong with Holiday and Middleton, given their relatively high floors. I also like the Raptors guys against the Kings. I feel like some of the Raptors prices are good too. The Kings, I think, give up the second most points per game in the NBA. And then we talked on this game a little bit, but the Philly guys against Minnesota. Minnesota's awful. And if Embiid's playing, that Embiid versus Naz Reid matchup will be interesting. And then Ben Simmons seems like this could be a night where it feels like Ben Simmons could absolutely, kind of take off. He had a triple-double yesterday against the Lakers, and I feel like going against the easy defense of Minnesota, it'd be like taking the donut off the bat. And I think he could put up another huge game. He's only 8,600 right now on FanDuel, so that's a really good price for him.
Yeah, Tobias Harris, cheaper than he has been in a while, $7,000. You're not going to find many guys who are averaging 35 fantasy points or more who are that cheap. You're looking at just a quick eyeball of the list. The only guy who is in that same range scoring wise, guy like Mike Conley's a few points lower. Basically, Colin Sexton, 6,900, or those are the only two. Everyone else, 75, 8,000. They're in that range. But Harris and Sexton, deflated. Yeah, Sexton matchup-based reasons, I would assume, is part of it, playing against New York's Thibs stout defense. Man, so weird to heap praise on the Knicks, but we're there.
That Cavs Knicks matchup is going to be just a black hole in terms of fantasy. Their over under right now is 208, and that might even be high. So it's tough to like anyone from there necessarily.
It's a weird dynamic where it could be such a competitive game that the starters see enough minutes, put up enough production. That's the worry I have with like the Minnesota Philly game is it's just going to be so lopsided that these guys, the starters for Philly are only going to play 28 minutes and won't reach value. I agree. The Knicks Cavs game looks really, really risky, but then when I see the price on a lot of these players, same thing. DraftKings, it's the same thing. I have actually multiple players from that game in my DraftKings lineup because their price is just so hard to pass up. I know the matchup isn't ideal for either team, but I feel like it could be such a hard-fought contest that you're still seeing Colin Sexton and R.J. Barrett and Julius Randle, play 35, 38 minutes and exceed value.
Yeah, the more I look at the prices across, I'm just looking at FanDuel, but a lot of these seem like they're almost discounted, surprisingly. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what's going on there, but it seems like there's a lot of different ways to build a roster today. And yeah, I think this will be one of those days where I look at the guy who wins the GPP and I'll just be like, how did I not think of that? Because I think the pricing will allow you to get so many great players in your lineup. Okay. Do you have any final thoughts on DFS before we essentially wrap this up without Ken's last 5 minutes of the podcast normally here?
No, and I guess I fall under the old man category, but I do not have a rant for us. So I apologize, listeners, but I think that's a wrap for me.
Yeah, that's a wrap for us. We'll be out of here until next Friday. Nick and I will probably post another podcast Tuesday or Wednesday.